Thanks as always for listening to Fluff and Crunch. In today's episode, Chris and I review Outgunned, the cinematic action role-playing game from Two Little Mice Games. The link to the game on DriveThruRPG is in the notes. Make sure to like and subscribe to YouTube or the podcast or wherever you're getting this. If you want to jump right to the content, it starts at 3 minutes. Anyway, hello, Chris. How are you today?
I'm good, thanks, Jeremy. How
now,
are you?
Are you hearing that?
No.
Okay. If I apologize to anyone listening, I'm having my roof replaced. And so there are gentlemen on my roof with saws and hammers and they're stomping around there, but I've got this mic set, so I hope it's not picking that up. And apparently it's not. So if you hear anything, that's what it is. It's me not wanting to have a leaky roof. So that's all the excitement I have. That's all. I did no gaming last weekend. I watched football all weekend.
You live in Arizona. You don't even have rain. How could you have a leaky roof?
You know, the problem is with rain in Arizona is it's feast or famine.
Oh, it's like tropical rain.
Yeah, we will have a couple of times a year, we will have periods where it will rain, all day, like moderately to heavily all day. And then we have nothing, for ages. And so right before Christmas, we had one of those, and we discovered a leak in our 29-year-old roof, and I knew it was about time to replace the thing. So there goes my fun money. But
I still remember being in San Francisco when they were having a storm, because we saw like weather forecasts and they were like, this is a storm. This is one of the worst storms we've had in years. And I was thinking, like, this is just a bit of rain. It's it's barely windy. Yeah, but I was sure, like, it's on the sea. I'd expect if they got bad weather, I could believe that. But it was some rain. It was a bit of wind. I was like, this is nothing.
No,
this is like, spring weather
that we get. It's Californians. Anyway. How have you been? Have you done any gaming?
I have not, so no. But I've been good, but I haven't done any gaming. How about you?
None. Like I said, I've been watching football. There are 3 football games left in the NFL season. They're the 2 conference championships and the Super Bowl. So I've been focusing on those.
Go Lions.
Hey, you know what? I love a Cinderella story. I love a plucky, look, Americans are suckers for the plucky kid who rises up, the underdog. So yeah, I'm cool with them.
That's not going to happen, but it'd be great. We wouldn't love it if the team that's perennially been one of the worst teams in the NFL in my entire lifetime.
Well, things change. Things change. So, but all that aside, and my roofing troubles and whatever, man, we got to think of better ways to transition.
Well, usually we come up with a good segue, but this time we didn't.
We don't have a segue because we're going to talk about a game that I've never played before, but I've read a decent amount of the rule book. And you have run, I believe.
I have run. I can't get out of the way. It's called Outgunned.
Outgunned. And you ran this last month, correct?
I ran this as my Christmas game. So pretty much it's a thing. I've only done it twice, but yeah, a year ago, I wanted to play some 2D20, so I did an Acton Cthulhu Christmas game.
I remember that.
Which was Christmas because it involved Santa and snow. And this year I wanted to do a Christmas game, and I had just bought this Outgunned thing. I think it was on Kickstarter, I don't know, maybe a year ago, early last year, something like that. And I was like, action movie role-playing game. I don't need an action movie role-playing game. I would never play that.
And then you bought it anyway.
It's probably Black Friday sales on drive-through. So it popped up. It was dirt cheap. And I had a look at it, and I was like, oh, actually, this looks quite promising. So I bought Outgunned and its second book.
Quick background on it. The PDF rule book is about 220 some pages. It looks like it is formatted for more of a digest size.
Yeah.
It looks like it. And I've read a decent amount of the rules, like enough so I have some sense of them, but it's from a company called Two Little Mice. And it looks to me, and this is just guessing, it looks like most of the the folks who made it are Italian.
Yes.
By all the names, it's distinctly Italian.
No. They are Italian. Quite strange that the 2 kind of newest games that I bought near the end of last year, which I was super keen on, are both by Italian designers and publishers, which is where all the good stuff's coming from now, apparently. It used to be Sweden, but now it's Italy.
Yeah. Interesting. So tell me a little bit about what drew you to this, and then we can jump into what it purports to be. What Outgunned and what is the tagline here? There is no, it's cinematic action role playing game. What you wanted to run a like a Die Hard style Christmas
I wanted
adventure?
to
Tell me about
run
that.
Die Hard, Lethal Weapon, that kind of style Christmas thing. And when you go and look for something like, it's one of the things I probably could have written a thing in 2D20 to do that. But this was designed specifically for cinematic action role playing things. And I think I'd got a look at the quick start and was like, okay, this looks interesting. But mainly the game was cheap. I think I paid like £12. That'd be like $15 ish for the first two books. So this is the core book, and then this thing called Action Flicks, which I'll get to later. So it was very little, and I had more than that in my account from selling
So yeah,
crap on
low risk investment. So you
Yeah,
pick
so
the
I was
thing
like,
up.
yeah, cool.
You pick the thing up. It's interesting. It's looking through it. It's and don't take this the wrong way, listeners, but there's not a the text is not very dense on the pages. There's a decent amount of breathing room in terms of the paragraph and text layout. And there are a lot of pictures, and there are a lot of pages where there's a picture and maybe a list, or a picture and a paragraph. So I mean, I found myself, I read, I think, the first 50 or 60 pages in like no time flat.
It was funny, yeah, because you said like, oh, that's 200 pages, and I was like, is it really? Because actually, I found this book very easy to read. Usually,
Yeah, very.
I struggle to read PDFs.
Mm,
I buy
me too.
PDFs and I struggle to read them, and usually it's a combination of like, if I on my tablet they're too small. On my PC, I don't really like reading lots of information off my PC screen. I'd rather have a book for that. But actually, I managed to read this very easily off a PC screen with a with 2-page view,
Okay.
because it has a nice big font,
Yeah, it does.
and it's very well laid out. The graphic design is great. Like I said, on a lot of the pages, there is just the stuff you need to know. There's silly little bits around it, which you can ignore if you want to. One of the bits I love about it is in the character creation section. We'll get to how the rules work in character creation in a bit, but this is just an example of one of the things I like about this game. In the character creation section, it has all these archetypes, which really just give you some, bare bones of a thing. But they have literally like the classic commandos in movies are, and it does it all the way through. But here's examples of why this game is so good. John Matrix in Commando, Sarah Connor in Terminator 2, Luke Hobbs in Fast Furious, Furiosa in Mad Max, Furo, John Rambo, Dutch, so Arnie got in there a second time, B.A. Baracus in the A-Team. All 4 of the A-Team are in this under different archetypes.
Right.
And it just, by reading through it, then you have a perfect idea of who this character is meant to be. But also, reading through all of those little things like that, it told me that the people doing this, they hadn't made an action movie role-playing game to cash into something. They are genuine action movie buffs. They love their action
Gotta
movies, and they wanted to do a game, and they know their stuff. I mean, okay, virtually everything in here, I've seen this, but these are people who've clearly they were watching action movies in the 80s, when action movies were big, and then they've got worse over time. But apart from anything with Keanu Reeves in, probably. But they have all this stuff in, and there's some funny nods to things which maybe aren't really aren't really action movies, but are action movie adjacent, which is then where Action Flicks comes in. So there was things like that. I like where these guys are going with this. I can see what they're trying to do. It's it's an action movie game in terms of they want it to be quick and easy and fun.
Yeah.
We don't see a lot of fun games anymore.
Well,
I think a lot of games are either too serious, or when a game's trying to be fun in terms of it's going to be narrative. That's how we do fun games. We have to have narrative games. You've occasionally talked about narrative games where the person's been telling you how you have to play this game, and you've got to play it in a certain way. This is very much, you can kind of, the whole impression of this game is like, look, here's some rules, have fun. That was my impression reading the book.
It even says right inside the book at the beginning, I hadn't noticed this. It says these are tools, not rules. So I found it fascinating.
Have you seen what it says on the back inlay?
There you go.
On the back inlay, I'm pretty sure it says something along the lines of, yeah, this rule book will self-destruct in 5 seconds.
All right. Only if it starts like, the little cassette starts to smoke like old Mission Impossible. Yeah, I agree with you. I think that the many examples, specific examples of characters and movies enables you to get where they're coming from immediately. Like there is a very firm foundation here of their idea of what an action movie is that you're easily able to get your head around. I appreciate that. So quickly, I'm looking at the table of contents and I'm moving to an introduction where they talk about like what's the goal and when does this take place, like their defaults, how many players, things like that, meta stuff. And then it goes into the pillars of action, which I thought were interesting. The action never stops. They have an explanation as to what that means, like at the movies. um you don't know everything, like that. And incidentally, the default time frame for this is before smartphones. It's supposed to be before, so this is like 80s to early aughts is what it said. um so they lay that out, and then again there are lots of examples. uh let's go through. Actually, do you want to talk about character creation, or do you want to talk about the what is the core mechanic?
I'll do character creation and then we'll go into core.
Yeah,
Character
character
creation,
creation
that's
is pretty
very straight.
straightforward.
I made characters for both Scott and Brian very quickly. And I basically did this around, it was stupid, but I originally I was wanted to do like a cyberpunky thing. And then eventually I decided that was just an extra layer I didn't need. But I'd already got this idea in my mind of a PI. And I came up with this Max Hammer. I was like, that's a great 80s cheesy PI name. He's an ex-cop. His wife died. So he's John McClane, but his wife died in a previous Christmas. And that was the setup for his character. And then I changed my mind a bunch of times who the second character is going to be, but creating the character is very, very easy. So you got choose a role, which is where you're picking these archetype things. So like commando and fighter. We've got commando, fighter, ace, agent, face, nobody, brain sleuth, criminal, spy. Very straightforward thing. Right. Some of them overlap. You think, well, I mean, we got, if I'm a cop, am I the agent or the sleuth? Well, that's where it's handy to read like the little things explaining what they're intended. There's not a lot of difference. So you choose a role, and all the role really does is it gives you some of your, it basically gives you a catchphrase and a floor to choose from. It gives you a bonus to attribute points, which I'll get to in a second. Tells you where you get some starting skills, and you pick some feats, so talents in every other game, and you get some gear. That's all it does. So in terms of, and then you pick another thing, which is your tropes. Your trope is like another thing. So it's a thing to add on to that. I'm trying to find the tropes now, but I can't. Oh, yeah, lone wolf, good Samaritan, leader. So you add that, or last Boy Scout. So it's the way you add those two things together. You can have the cop who's the loose cannon, or you can have the cop who's the Murtaugh which was Brian. I mean, Brian, that is the catchphrase I gave Brian because I had to. His character was in his 50s. All right, your character has to have the line, I'm too old for this shit. Because
so the you've got this overall role, and there are plenty of examples, and then you choose this trope that then helps guide you into like, well, how do you play that role? Because there are lots of different kinds of spies. There are lots of different aces or fighters. Do you want to talk about the stats?
Yeah, that's what I was going to go on to now. So okay, by picking your role and trope, it gives you some points in your stats and skills, and then you get a few extra ones. And your stats and skills only go literally 1, 2, 3. Your attributes go 1, 2, 3, and I think your skills go 1, 2, 3 as well. So the most that's it. It's not a huge variety in that. So you have brawn, which is for physical stuff, and then there's 4 skills under that, which are to do with physical stuff. You have nerves, which is so it's quick reflex and steady hands, and that has like cool drive, so keeping your cool. And then that has drive and shoot underneath it, whereas fighting is underneath brawn. Smooth is basically charisma, because it has flirting and speech and stuff under that. Then you have focus, which is focus isn't. There's not really intelligence. It's focus. You have detect, heal, fix, and know. So it does have intelligence on that, but it also has like your perception. So if you're being a detective, Brian is a detective character, he had quite a high focus and he had a good detect skill. And I then think crime
that's an interesting stat, because looking at those skills, it's not just okay, here's how much you know, it's how much can you how are you able to employ knowledge, understanding, perception in specific circumstances. I think
Yeah.
that's an interesting combination.
I think that was useful in it because, like, you think in an action movie thing, you probably don't want loads of mental stats. So really, there's just one, and then we have an entirely separate stat for crime, and then crime has dexterity, stealth, streetwise, and awareness in it. So again, to stop, because you always have this. Anytime you've got a modern or kind of, when most of your characters are like human level, and this actually is a 2d20 problem. Lots of games have this problem. Like anytime where you're playing a modern day thing, like D&D style, you've got dexterity. Dexterity becomes this god stat because you end up using dexterity for driving and shooting and sneaking and picking locks and everything. So if you have a high dex, your character's everything. So this has a separate fifth stat called crime, and stealth and streetwise and dexterity are under that. And it just it's good. So if you want a character who's really good at criminal stuff, then there's this separate stat which is, and a bunch of skills are under there. So, you know, whether it works or not is irrelevant. It's a good way of trying to make sure that someone who doesn't, you know, there isn't a god stat, and they've very clear. You can kind of look and go, that's why they've done that. They've tried to stop there being one stat which is all encompassing. Kind of like how we used to see in 2d20 how they would separate off sort of agility and coordination,
right?
So that you didn't have all of the good stuff in one stat. They'd add this extra stat in.
So looking at this, just to be clear, there are 10 different roles. There are 5 stats, and under each of those 5 stats, there are 4 skills. So there are a total of 20 different skills that are evenly distributed there. And then you have a choice of feats. Okay. Moving on in the character creation process. What's next?
I mean, that's pretty much it. Literally, having picked your role and your trope, that gives you a bunch of attribute and skill points. You then get a couple of extra skill points to add on to that. You choose your feats. Feats are talents, but most of the talents do pretty much similar things. But we'll get to them when we do the rules. You get some gear from your rule, and then you have some starting like meta currency, and that's literally it. So I made characters for Scott and Brian like 10 minutes each, literally because I had an idea of the character in my head. So I found the role I needed, I found the trope I needed, I marked that stuff down, and then I added some extra skill points on and picked which feats I wanted, and they were done. It was super, super quick.
Oh, what's nice,
you could easily do this and then play with it in the same, just get on and play.
Easily. Yeah, in my read through it, I could see very clearly how there are not, I believe that there's an adequate variety and number of options that if you have an idea as to what kind of action, if you're into the action movie genre and you have an idea, I want to play that kind of character, or you just be like, I want to play this character from this movie I'm going to rub the serial number off and give me a new name. It's not John Matrix, it's Ron Matrix or something like that. You can build that character immediately. Something else I'm also noticing, I'm looking at the character sheet here, is that cash, money is abstract. There are some other things in this game that, like, I look at ammo. Ammo is abstract. So there aren't, like, from the jump, I'm seeing that this is going to be, it has a similarity with 2D20 in some of those ways, that it's not trying to be simulationist, because of course an action movie is not a simulation.
Yeah, since you brought up, ammo is very similar to what it's like in some 2D20 games, where, like, basically you don't run out of ammo unless you either choose to use it to, like, spray and pray, or your gun jams, and those are that's it. So you can run out of ammo, but if you're just kind of, I shoot at this guy, I shoot at this guy, I shoot at this guy, you're James Bond, you're not running out of ammo. And cash, like I said, it's abstracted. It's, if you need to go and buy something, can you afford to? Probably not. Realistically, in most films, how many times do you actually see a character go on a shopping spree? And with, usually if they
go on a stealing spree, like John Matrix did when he broke into that survivalist store and stole everything. You're right. We don't, those are not things that are interesting.
You have allies where you requisition stuff.
Yeah.
Or it's the Matrix and you say, we need guns. And
so, okay, so your character is created. How does the core mechanic work?
So the core mechanic is a bit odd and takes a little bit of explanation. There's 2 kind of roles. There are action roles and reaction roles, and there's very little difference. An action role is you want to do something, and if you succeed, you do it. And a reaction roll is something is happening to you. So the easy way to kind of think
and
of
the
that
reaction, I'm assuming, is something's happening to you, and you want to make it
so,
not happen.
Like, you want to jump from one building to another. That's an action roll. You are pushed off a building, and you need to grab something. That's a reaction roll.
Okay.
So in combat. In combat, literally, when you come down to bad guys, the bad guy stats is essentially difficulty. So when you're attacking someone, you're attacking their defense. So it's an action roll. And when they attack back, they have a score for their attacking thing. And you basically make a reaction roll against their attack stat. So you're always rolling. The GM never does any rolling. It's always the players rolling. The most basic.
That's hard for some people.
I think if I only ever played games where the GM didn't roll, I would get fidgety and I'd want to roll. But I think occasionally it's nice to have a game where you can go, I'm just going to be able to concentrate on noting down the stuff I want to do and reading my notes, and I don't have to mess around with the dice.
Wow. Now, talk about dice, because
I wouldn't like to do other dice. So it only uses D6s.
But
so your basic 6-sided dice. You basically, your initial pull is it's attribute plus skill. So I'm going to be shooting someone, and that's like nerves plus shoot. Okay, I've got nerves of 2 and a shoot of 2. I pick up 4 dice. There are a couple of things that give you bonus dice. So if you've got like decent gear, that might give you another point. If you're for like shooting, you might be in the optimal range for your gun, or the guy might have fallen over, or whatever else, or the GM's giving you it. So there's an extra way of getting. I think in mine, I probably said if you describe it really cool, I'm going to give you an extra point, because that's going to make it more fun. It's like a nice, easy rule to bring in.
And when you say points, we're talking about modifiers here. Are you talking about dice?
Yeah, dice. Yeah.
So that's so the way that you modify, you're not about modifying like those you're modifying the number of dice in or out of your pool.
There's some basic ones, like, so you do set a difficulty, which you'll get to, but the for little things, it's like it says, if things are slightly in your favor or slightly against your favor, it's a +1, -1. Your gear, if you've got decent gear, it says it gives you +1, and you have this like meta stat called adrenaline, which you can spend to get extra dice. So it's one of those kind of standard things. You start with a pool of adrenaline. There's ways of getting more as you play through the game.
Okay.
So that's your dice. So most of the time the guys were using, like, they were using their decent stats, and so they were often rolling sort of 6 or 7 dice, or in that really 5, 6, 7 dice. That's why they were often rolling. Sometimes they had to roll less. Sometimes some weird things happen and they got to roll way more. So then what you do is you roll those dice, and you have to match so many of a number. Okay, so basic difficulty is you have to get a pair. Doesn't matter which number, you just have to roll a pair. Critical is the next difficult, and that's the one we seem to roll a lot. Like most things were critical difficulty, and critical difficulty needs a 3. So you need 3 of a kind. Now, if you imagine you're rolling 6 dice, actually rolling 3 of a kind on 6 dice is actually quite difficult. It gives you kids the odds, despite the fact most of this game is very nice and easy and basic. They actually have a table with all the success, but I think that's quite useful just to have a quick glimpse, because a lot of people go, I don't like dice pool games because I have no idea of the odds.
Well, and this is a
people,
novel way. I have never heard of this method of adjudicating a dice pool. Usually it's adding things together or trying to get like in World of Darkness or 2D20, you're trying to get a certain number of successes. This is completely different. I noticed that as well, the probability piece, and it did feel like this piece of very crunchy crunch in a field of fluff, but it totally makes sense. I think it drives home the workability or the viability of this this method.
Yeah. So the initial thing you think, well, if I'm rolling 4 or 5 dice, getting 3 of a kind is incredibly difficult. You're absolutely right. Okay. And then that's where this extra thing comes in. So you roll and this is where it gets a bit weird. So that's your basic roll. You roll. Now, chances are you fail. Okay, because rolling 3 of a kind, which tended to be the main thing, like rolling 2 of a kind is easy. Rolling 4 of a kind, which we only had to do once or twice, was incredibly difficult. 3 of a kind is doable, but doesn't happen all the time. You make your first roll, and then there are 2 extra things you get to re-roll. The most basic one is if you score what's called a success. If you get a 2 of a kind, but you didn't get the 3 of a kind, you can choose to pick up the dice that didn't. Basically pick up the ones that didn't hit and roll them again. So let's say you rolled a pair of 2s and a bunch of other stuff. You pick up your other 3 dice that didn't roll 2s, roll them again, hoping that they're going to give you another 2, and then you'll get your 3 of a kind. If you don't get it, you basically lose everything you've got. So you've got that, you're back to nothing. Unless, and that's one of the things where it calls it a free reroll. If most of the talents in the game, most of the feats in the game basically say you're allowed a free reroll if you're shooting. So you don't have the risk of losing anything. Because essentially when you're trying to shoot someone, let's say it's critical difficulty, or you're trying to do a driving roll. If you need 3 of a kind, but you get 2, then at least you didn't get it, but you're almost there. Or you're trying to dodge a punch. Like the guy's going to hit you and you need 3. You only get 2 of a kind. So he hits you, but he does less damage. If you roll nothing, you take all the damage. So that's why it's important sometimes to get 2. So you get a free reroll. Then you have this weird thing called all in, where if after your reroll you still haven't got what you need, you can just roll a bunch more. Again, roll the dice that weren't part of a success again. So because of that, because you have 2 attempts to re-roll the dice, pretty frequently they were able to hit the 3 they needed. So initially when I was looking at the rules, and I'm thinking, flip it, 3 of a kind on sort of 4 or 5 dice, that's really difficult. It's still difficult when you're re-rolling, because obviously like you're still only rolling 1 or 2 dice again, but it meant that, you know, more often than not, they were getting a thing. And then there's pretty good rules in here for kind of what happens if you don't succeed. Okay, if you don't get what you need, and it does make it very clear that, you know, they're trying to aim for, well, if you don't succeed, you know, this isn't the end of the thing. And there's like a whole pale about 4 whales to fail with style. So essentially, you failed, but so, you know, they don't want the game to stop. You know, here's how you add in extra consequences. They try and make it very clearly what should happen if something goes wrong. Now, the only other bit of wrinkle on that dice thing is you have this idea of danger rolls, or dangerous rolls. I just call them danger. Essentially, a dangerous roll is if you don't succeed, you take damage, and that's what happens in combat. So if a bad guy goes to shoot you or hit you, and you fail your reaction roll to dodge it, you take damage because you failed. The thing is, the damage scales up a lot. So you have about 10 health. I can't remember, but let's say it's about 10. It's that kind of region. When someone hits you and they're only doing basic damage, you take 1 point. But then critical is 3 and extreme is 9. So I had this bad guy that was doing extreme damage. And if they rolled to defend and got nothing, they took 9 damage, which basically means they're close to being KO'd in 1. You know, if they got hit a second time, that's it, they're down. If they got 3 successes and got critical, you take away the difference. So they take 3 off. They still take 6. So a guy's hitting you with extreme damage. So very quickly it was like, right, this is going to be bad. So they were like, right, we're going to try and disarm him. You know, because I think it was a guy with a machine gun or a sword or something. So then when they disarmed him, I said his damage came down, because I was like, oh, he's going to, you know, he's basically meant to be a henchman with a big gun or something like that. He was very quickly going to wreck them. And there was other ways of like mitigating the damage, but that essentially, that's it. That's the rules. There are
something that I found in
not a lot else
in reading it started to get a little confusing initially.
Yeah, I found that.
It started to get a little confusing because you have these different kinds of roles, and I'm trying to get my head around, okay, why am I able to re-roll so much and whatnot? One of the nice things that the authors have done with this, though, is they've provided a lot of notional examples.
Yeah.
A lot of examples, big and small. Like, I mean, you know, 2 or 3 sentences after some additional mechanical step, or a page or so. And again, the whole thing is, layout wise, there's a lot of breathing space. It's really easy to read. So I appreciate that. Now, what about these? I'm looking at on the character sheet. I like this. There's you look and hurt, nervous, like a fool, distracted, scared, tired. And then there's the death roulette, which it looks like you're looking down a 6-shot cylinder of an old style revolver. Tell us about the death roulette.
The hurt, nervous, like a fool, distracted. They're just conditions. They're right. When you essentially you get like when you've got like a wound. So what would be like a wound in 2d20, which gives you then a -1 to one of the particular stats from then on. The death roulette is quite cool. So this is what you don't actually like. If you run out of grit, so your health, you don't die. You have this death roulette, one of the things rolled in. So if you filled up all of your grit and you're out of grit, you have to roll on the death roulette. So you roll a 6-sided dice. If the number you roll is greater than however many things you filled in, then you survive. You
start with
die.
one. There is one
with
already bubbled in,
yeah.
and then there are 5 open spaces in that revolver
Um,
cylinder.
but other players can like sort of jump in the way to take the hit for you. So if you're at risk of like you're going to die, the other players can do things, because you can pick up these things called spotlights. So you start with 1 at the start of the game, and if you get a really good roll, you can gain another spotlight. The spotlights are kind of like, in fact, they're very, very similar to the Uber currency in 2D20, where they basically let you make you automatically succeed. You get an extreme success when you get one. So you can, you can use them to save people. So if one of your mates is about to die on the death roulette, you use it to save a friend. But you can get them relatively, because you can get them by using your own flaws. So if you deliberately play your character flawed, like because they're an alcoholic or they're too risky or whatever, and if you use your catchphrase at the right thing. So Brian at one point had like 3 spotlights because he'd played into his flaw and he'd used his catchphrase at the right moment. So he was sitting on 3 spotlights. So when they were fighting, he was struggling in a fight, it was like, well, you've got this spotlight thing, use it to get an extreme success. But there's actually a thing in it. It says like you can use it for the things I've just said, and there's another one where it says do whatever you want. So it is literally a case of, if you want it to do some cool story thing, that's what the spotlight's for.
There's something let me just jump in on that. Throughout the book, I found those kinds of comments and that kind of vibe, and nowhere did it feel like the designers were trying to just phone it in, be like, we really don't want to write the rules for this, so you make it up, Mr. GM, or you figure it out, and making it seem like that's some great creative exercise. It never felt like that. The nice thing about it, and I haven't played it, obviously. You've told me about it. I've now read, most of the book, a decent amount of the book. I really think, and this goes back to this whole system setting and story that we use as a tagline for the show. I think that they clearly worked really hard to build a system that stacked the deck in favor of the tropes and the action in these kinds of action movies. And having not played it, obviously, I can't, state with, definitively, but it really seems like they've done a good job. It seems to me like you would have those kinds of outcomes. You would have those moments that would help to emulate, if your players got it, help to emulate that this genre at the table. Did you have that experience in the sessions that you played?
I mean, totally. Like the only real extra rules like when it comes to fighting, the rules are literally you're doing attacks, you're doing defenses. Bad guys basically have an attack rating and a defense rating, and then how much health they have. And you can feel them as like a group. And if they're a group, it's like, well, the health that's kind of the health for the whole group. So you take out all of them, they're all gone. There's not much more complicated that. There are slightly more complicated rules for like chases, but it pretty much boils down to kind of an extended task type thing that we see in other games. Except you have like a speed rating, and your speed, how much you add time when your speed keeps adding to this number, eventually you get to where you're going, kind of thing. And you can do it as like a chase or as a race or as just like getting from A to B kind of thing. But yeah, that all worked fine. The combats worked fine. The non-combat stuff worked fine because they were just making rolls. But it was handy when Brian like remembered, oh, actually I'm quite good at talking to people, so I can get information out of things. Oh, this guy owes me a favor, and it all worked. It all worked relatively straightforward. I didn't have the most complicated thing. It was an action movie thing. It was a couple of basic investigative things, and I know I can talk to this guy, and spotting these details, which took you on to the next scene, and then big silly action scenes, and then finished off with both of them having one-on-one fights with bad guy where I can't remember how Scott killed his guy. I know Brian threw his guy onto an ice skating ring and ran him over with a Zamboni, because I set that up, because I was like, there's an ice skating ring. Brian's like,
that sounds so much like some schlock action movie.
Exactly. Brian's like, is there a Zamboni there?
Something from
of course
Canon
there is.
Films.
Right. Well, that's how I'm totally killing this guy. I think Scott wrapped his guy up in like Christmas, like fairy lights, and like hung him that way or something. But so it was.
And then did he have a "You're dead now" catchphrase?
Yes, but I can't remember what it was. But yes, both of them tried to come up with the I mean, all the way through it, yeah, particular points when they would kill people, they were doing silly quote things, but yeah, it was good fun. Like, the characters, Brian's character had flaws, it paid into it. I mean, the other thing that made it nice, which was nothing to do with the game, is that every single scene, I'd worked out a list. I think I had about 17 scenes. I mean, which gives you an idea of actually, I 17 scenes and I played this in like 2.5 hours. It did not take long. It was very snappy. But I had a separate song for every scene, and they were all Christmas songs, and they were all themed to the particular scene.
Let me jump in and ask you this really quickly. So you read this, you made the characters, and you presented it to your two players who are obviously experienced gamers. Had they read the rules before, or did you just explain them? Okay, I figured not. So
I'm not sure they've ever read
okay.
a rule.
But my point though with that is you
No,
were
they
able
did.
to read the rules, make the
Yes.
characters, hand the characters to them, and say, "This is what we're going to do. This is how the mechanic works," and you were able to run the session smoothly.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, it's not even like, because some games you need like a cheat sheet that explains. Like when I play with Infinity, like I need not Infinity, just any 2D20.
Sure,
Like I need a
momentum for
cheat
new
sheet
players
with
is a big one for that.
momentum spends. What do all the qualities on the weapons do? What do the effects on the weapons do? They need to make sure they know what their talents are. I need cheat sheets for all the bad guys. There's a whole
You
chunk of
required
stuff.
none of that for this.
I didn't need it. I had a sheet with my basically my scenes and the bad guys, but the bad guys were like 3 numbers and a talent maybe, and that was about it. And the chase scenes, I needed boxes for those. So, but they didn't. They didn't need any cheat sheets at all.
And
Because
now,
the basic system, once you'd explained it and the idea of the re-rolling, that was pretty much it. That was literally it.
now looking through the book, there's focus on running this as shots. That's what they call it. Like a single adventure session is a shot, a one-off, or a very short arc. They also talk about campaign play. There are advancement rules. What do you see as this game's strengths?
I mean, personally, I really liked playing it as a one shot. There are there's quite detailed rules for playing a campaign, because you actually have like enemies that are meant to come back, and you're meant to like gain experience your characters, and you have like this heat rating that builds up over time, which the bad guy can, like, when things happen, the bad guys get better as you play through the campaign, and you're meant to be like, the heroes have these sort of plan A, plan B, and plan C things they can use during the campaign, but they only get one shot. So there is actually extra like meta rules on the campaign, which normally the only thing you ever see in a campaign for most games is just it's just you gain XP and then play through it. So this actually has like meta rules on top, which I find a bit odd, because just that's the one thing which didn't feel like on message to me. You don't tend to have action movie series.
Right.
I mean, like they've turned Reacher into a series, but that's an exception. Action movies are films. Maybe there's a sequel or two, unless it's Fast and Furious and there's 10 of them. But generally there's 1 or 2 of them. So I as a one shot went 5 minutes. I don't know this for sure. I've only played it once, but I do feel that because the system is quite slight, unless your stories were amazing, I think if you kept playing it, I feel like you would get bored. I feel like it would get very samey.
Well, I mean, different
But I think
games.
it depends on the GM. Like if you are running really cool things with really cool action scenes and it's all really different, exciting, then no one would care that the mechanics are really simple.
Yeah.
But because I quite like mechanics, I think if I kept playing it, I mean, the guys were like, I want to play this again. But I was in me like, right, well, I need a really good idea to play this. If I was just doing like a really bog standard, like not very exciting actiony play by the numbers thing, I'd spent time thinking of like cool set pieces. But yeah, they have got rules for campaigns in there. Can I talk about the second book then while I'm at it?
Yeah,
Because
I want to
that's
throw in one last thing about this book. There is a page deep in the book. It is page 197, where it talks about the one hero army, and that is running one character with the GM. And so there are some mechanical adjustments and some suggestions. I mean, it's one page. It's not a whole lot of information, but the idea that you could run, like you could do Rambo, you could do arguably Commando or the Chuck Norris Mission MIA movies.
a good chunk of Predator.
Yeah, good point. Well, everyone else was there to die just so they could show how badass the Thing was and how badass Schwarzenegger was. That's all. That's the only reason those characters exist. So there is that option also. So what is? I didn't even look at the other book at all. What is in the other book?
So the other book is called Action Flicks, and this is actually part of the reason I ended up buying it, because I was looking for like a cyberpunk action game. That's what I want. I wanted something which was like sort of simple rules, but kind of action, but and a cyberpunk thing. And that's someone pointed me onto it because of this. So Action Flicks is a book where essentially they've done. I mean, actually in it, it has like these little pictures of like videotapes. And like each videotape is it's a different genre, but they've given them names. So you have Star Raiders, which is it's just Star Wars and Firefly, like Rise and Dragon martial arts. I was giving weirder things, which is basically it's Stranger Things. It's not even subtle.
Yeah, I love the fact that they are explicit in mentioning, by name
Yeah.
action characters and movies, and that, I mean, let's face it, they dive right into the genre and activate all the tropes. I appreciate that.
I mean, I love this because actually it doesn't just go for the obvious stuff, because underneath Star Raiders, it has Valerian and the City of a Thousand Planets, which I absolutely loved. And like loads of people have never even seen it. And then again, so each of these just gives it like they give a couple of rules. They like go over the core themes. It gives them ideas of missions. They throw in maybe a couple of extra rules, so like laser weapons or spaceships or robots. Or there's one called Ghost Hunters, which literally it's Ghostbusters. There's one where you're basically Blade and so on. And then they give you maybe a couple new tropes to go into the thing. So, we have lovable scoundrel under Space Heroes. So that's, it's Lando or it's Han Solo. And all of them give you an extra role. And that's one of the things, again, I loved it when in the classic Star Raid, we have the Star Raider, who's like the captain. And they give us the obvious, we get Han Solo, we get Mal from Fireflies, and they give me Dutch from Killjoys. That when I saw that, I was like, these are my people. They have watched Killjoys. This is a relatively obscure bounty hunter sci-fi program that like me and Mika were like absolutely in love with. And we don't know anyone else has seen it. And I was like,
I never heard of it.
These guys have seen Killjoys. That's how amazing they are. And it's kind of like that all the way through it. So this is the next time I'm going to use this book is when Ghostbusters Frozen Empire, wherever it comes out, I'm going to run a Ghostbusters game and I'm going to use this. And this will now be my go-to system. If I see a film at the cinema and I'm like, I really want to play a Musketeers game because there's one for that. Or I really want to do, a game based on it's an action movie, and I really want a game that can run something very, very similar. I can just pick up Outgunned because it's very simple, and I know it will be able to run kind of human level stuff. It's the kind of things that most people go, "Oh, use Savage Worlds for," and Savage Worlds is not fast or furious, but it is fun. Yeah. I'll give them that, but it's not fast or furious. This is fast. This is fun. This is furious, and it's very, very. It's easy to stat. For the GM, it's very easy to do. Right. For the players, it's easy to do. I do think over time it would get a bit samey, but so just being able to like just throw in the odd. I just this is it's for me it's a game for one shots. I think it's brilliant for one shots. It's very well presented. There is actually a whole nother third book called World of Assassins where the tropes basically it's like John Wick, the role-playing game. I'm not sold on this game as a campaign game. But it does, if you play this game as a campaign and it works, great, go for it. To me, having a game which is super easy to go, I really want to play a game set in based on after that I've seen this film or I've watched this TV program or I've read this book and being able to get this is the thing I will grab. Like when the books are available to actually like buy, I will get the books for this because I think it's a really good little system.
Yeah, I'm impressed. I'm impressed with it as I can't say a physical product because I've just seen a digital version of it, but I had the same experience. Like I don't like reading at length off of a screen unless it's my tablet and then there are some layouts and looks, fonts, sizes, things like that. Some that just work better than others. This one, they did a really nice job making it entirely really readable on a tablet. And yeah, I can absolutely see where, it's funny. We've done so many episodes about using 2D20 to model different kinds of properties like Ghostbusters and things like that. And this this actually, I think, does an even better job of it, because it is such a simple system. Yeah, there are a few, I won't call them wrinkles, but there are a few things that are novel enough that you have to take. When I finally figured it out, not finally, but when I felt like I got my head around it, was when I stopped trying to think of it as, well, what is this in other rules? When I stopped thinking about it relative to other games, and I started thinking about it, okay, what does this look like in an action movie? I forgot about how other systems do their mechanics, and I focused on, okay, what are you asking me to do at the table to figure out this question mechanically? I just thought of the movies that they provided, and that helped make sense of it. Yeah, I think I'm interested. I would like to, in all my not extra time to play different games, I would like to give it a shot too.
It was really good fun. It was nice to just play something, where I didn't have to spend too much time worrying about the rules of the game. I got to spend time thinking about what did I want the scenes to be in my action movie. And then we played it. I didn't have to, if I could have done it in 2D20, but the stats would have just been much more complicated. Because the bad guy stats, and it's very simple, and the challenge ratings for everything is very straightforward. It was, I concentrated on the story because the system was very easy to run with.
I think that there's absolutely a place for and this, I don't say this in negative terms at all, for like a limited range game or system. Like, this is what this system is supposed to do, and these are the kinds of games and stories that you would do with it. And I think it's terrific to have a system that's really good for one-offs. I mean, let's face it, one-offs are like 1 or 2 session games. That's when you crank up the action. That's when you contrast things so much that you can't sustain that over a long period of a campaign. So a system that works and does that, I mean, that's terrific. And especially one, obviously, that isn't difficult to get your head around as a player or a GM. That's what you would want. So cool. I'm glad that you pointed me at this, because I'm gonna give it a whirl, and we'll put a link in the notes to the page on Drive-Thru, and I'll try to hit up the folks who designed it, so when this drops, we can let them know that we're saying nice things about their work.
Well, they've got a Discord, so we can.
There we go.
If nothing else, we can always just drop it on the Discord when it comes out.
Probably
Great. Be next week.
All right. Remember what we had to tell people?
Yeah, they have to like and subscribe, and if they want to write comments,
subscribe, leave comments, and join the conversation at our Discord.
Yeah.
And I'm going to add one more. There's a link in both the podcast and the YouTube version of this. There's a link to an email list, because we're going to build an email list so that we can start sending things to people, not pestering them, but letting them know when we're dropping new content and other things that we're working on. So there you go. All those things, do that, please. Thank you, as always, for listening to Fluff and Crunch. You can join our Discord, you can subscribe to the podcast, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, all through the links in the show notes. Thanks again. Have a great day. We look forward to talking with you.